Hi, my name is Ian. This is my channel, and welcome back to my series, My Take, where I offer my own take or opinion on issues here in New Zealand and throughout the world. Today I thought I would cover the proposed treaty referendum that David Seymour is looking at. Now, I know this is a divisive topic, always talking about the Treaty of Waitangi here in New Zealand, but my opinion is going to be considered unpopular, and hell, I'd probably even be considered a racist for my opinion by some people in this country. But here it is. I think we should have a treaty referendum because of the fact that there is so much infighting with the treaty. I mean, it's written in two different languages, so of course you can't fault the Maori for following the treaty written in Maori, and you can't really fault anybody else for following the treaty written in English. I mean, so we should at least clarify that once and for all. Do we follow the English version? Do we follow the Maori version? We should also get rid of all the add-ons, or as I eloquently call them, DLCs, that which for you non-techies out there means downloadable content that have been added on to the treaty since the 80s, 90s, and nowadays. We should go back to also making it about the 1840 treaties. I also think we should have a referendum on making English an official language of New Zealand, given the fact that the bulk of New Zealanders, including immigrants who come here, speak English. Less than 2 to 3% of our population, or it's certainly less than 5 anyway, percent of our population speak, Maori, but we're promoting Maori everywhere. You'd think the way the government and the media, with the way they advertise it, you would think that like the bulk of the people speak Maori and less than 2 or 3% speak English. So we should also make English an official language of New Zealand as well. Especially, like I said, the majority of the people speak the language in the country. But yeah, but I'll go back to the treaty debate. I do. I think it's a very divisive issue, but I also don't agree with things like John Tamahiri threatening that he's going to shut down the cities or get violent if there's a referendum on it. I mean, that indicates to me that he's unwilling, and anyone who agrees with him is unwilling to have a rational, reasonable discussion about it. I mean, I even know Maori personally in my life who, have issues over the treaty. I mean, and that's the thing. The treaty has caused more disputes than it's probably actually solved over its many, many years. So I think we do need to have a proper referendum on it. However, I think David Seymour here maybe needs to classify exactly what he's referring to when he means he wants a referendum on the treaty. But of course, no one from the other side of the fence is willing to listen to what he's proposing, so they're just making an assumption. So I'm hoping that though we can end up having rational, reasonable discussions about it, and I don't believe most Maori would get violent over wanting to discuss it, just as I don't believe most white people would get violent over it not being discussed. I think you'll get a small section of extremists or radicals who will get violent because they're unwilling to have a rational discussion. So yes, I do believe there are some people that will get violent, but yeah, Tamahiri sounds like he's a bully when he says that. Oh, we're going to make it shut down the cities and lead to violence. Well, you know, that just makes it look like you're unwilling to, you know, be a reasonable person and have a reasonable discussion. But one thing I have to hand to David Seymour on this is he's not backing down from it. It'll be interesting to see if it happens. I mean, I personally doubt it's gonna happen. I think that, like David Seymour probably said, to get elected, in all honesty. And for the record, I am on the right side, so I am on the National Act, New Zealand First side. I don't hide that for a second. But, I think that, it won't happen because I think there'll be too much of an outcry. Like I said, I don't think there'll be violence, but I do think there will be possibly a bit of an outcry. And it'll be interesting to see, though, how much pressure goes on Luxon over it. Although, if somebody starts a petition about it, it'll be interesting to see if, say, there were, 50,000 signatures that turned up at Parliament about having a referendum on it. Would the government have to yield then? Because, again, that was one of those things that helped ACT get in, was that and the promises they made on cutting down on crime. So yeah, I think things like, the treaty, which version we use, debates about co-governance, etc. I think we need to have proper discussions, but also abusing people and telling them they're racists for wanting to talk about it isn't having a proper discussion. That's just abusing someone because you're not willing to show them the respect for their opinion. So, yeah, we need to decide definitely one way or the other what we're going to do. And yeah, like I said earlier, Seymour needs to clarify when he says these are the parts of the treaty that I think we need a referendum on, because then it stops arguments. If he just goes, right, well, we're going to clarify which version we use, English or Maori, boom. I'm sure most people would vote on that without it causing too much of a drama in the country, because then we know once and for all which one we follow. But if we're taking bits out of that one and bits out of the other one, nobody knows what's happening, And the wording ends up being differently, because there's, like in the English version, it says something about the sovereignty that, like, the Maori conceded. But in the Maori version, as far as I understand, and I'm not too familiar with Maori, so I'm not going to even bother to try and pronounce the Maori words because I'll end up butchering them. But as far as I understand, there was no set word in Maori for sovereignty, so they had the word governance. But from what I understand, having spoken to a couple of Maoris, I know that even the governance, they signed the treaty in part because they wanted the English to govern them. So if you want the English to govern you, then you can't have co-governance anyway. So regardless of whether the debate's over sovereignty or governance, if there's a Maori word that says that you ceded governance to England, to Britain in the Maori version of the treaty, then you can't come back 180 years later and squawk about wanting co-governance, because the treaty says even your own treaty you all signed, then would say that, no, we've ceded governance to the British. We wanted them to govern us to, maybe create a bit more order in the country. Whatever the motivations were behind it. So, I mean, if you've ceded governance then, you can't suddenly unseed it 180 years later. So that's basically my take on the treaty. I hope I've informed people. I didn't really want to debate the Treaty of Waitangi on this channel because it's always a divisive topic. Just like talking about Israel and Palestine is divisive, or talking about abortion or anything like that, So, I've gone there on the treaty on this one, but, hopefully, though, we reach a reasonable resolution whether we have the referendum or not. Personally, like I said earlier, I am not opposed to a referendum on the treaty because I think it clarifies at least what version we need to be using. And let's say, for example, we use the Maori version. If 95% of us don't know what's written in it, then it can just be interpreted anyway. Whereas the English version, the majority of us speak English in the country, so the majority of us would be able to read and understand what it says. Anyway, that's all I thought I'd cover. As usual, guys, please keep your comments respectful, and I welcome dialogue on the channel about it. Thanks and bye.